What you want, yeah. We just chillin' by the Wawas, lemonade with the large fries. Puff twice for the calm high, ayy, what you want, yeah. Big checks make the bank bounce. Old school candy paint down. Bad chicks, they from down south, ayy, what you want, yeah.
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, BQ Quick Review. I'm your host, BQ, and today we're going to be doing a reaction video to Vice. They've done a video of pro-feminists versus anti-feminists. Now we're going to get right into this, no time wasted here. But before we get into it, like, comment, and subscribe as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you want me to react to a video, go to my Instagram at biquon, or you can just put it down in the comments. I'll get right to it. But let's get right to this one right here. See what's going on.
I'm Liz Landers. I'm Vice News' chief political correspondent, and we are here today to talk about some of the biggest issues dividing women across the country. In other words, we're here to talk about feminism. First, I just want to say, we know we can't represent everybody's views, but we did try our best to bring together a diverse group of women today.
I can see already that they have just pearly things, and I forgot the woman that's on the left side of the screen, but I recognize two of them in the video, and they are definitely two controversial people. So I would say they got some pretty divisive people on here. So I'm interested to see what they're going to say, if they're going to be as polarizing as they usually are too. But let's continue.
Today's polarized world, is feminism dead? I saw your hand.
I think that depends on the definition of feminism. I strongly think that feminism is more of an action than an identity. I would say it's uplifting all women, in which case it's very alive.
I believe they have two trans
At the same
on
time,
this,
if we do follow that definition,
I've seen one,
feminism has splintered off into so many different areas that you can look at people like Sheryl Sandberg who say you should just get another nanny if you feel oppressed. And if we're talking about that kind of feminism, yeah, it's pretty dead.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the human race exists, feminism will never be dead. There's something that we're always going to have to strive and work towards to make sure that there's equality. So feminism is not dead.
I don't know that it can die. As long as there's power and oppression, there will be people fighting for equity. And until that somehow goes away, feminism is alive and well.
I think feminism isn't actually about equality. It's about equality when it benefits us. I think feminism, it's really about women wanting special privileges and treatment.
Oh, they're going to hate.
And I think it's alive and well, sadly.
They're going to hate Pearly so much on this panel. I can tell, like, they're not going to like her. And one thing I'll say about Pearly is I don't agree with all of her sentiments, because there's kind of like just a lot of repeated stuff in the red pill community that she kind of uses, which I think a lot of people use, which is nothing wrong with it. But there's some things that I disagree with the red pill, you know. But I think she speaks facts a lot of the time, but some things I don't quite agree with. But let's go.
I think feminism is also alive.
They're definitely
going to
hate her, though.
There are different kinds of feminism, right? Like, that is obvious. And for me, as a womanist, as a Black feminist, right, as someone who's really thinking about human rights, dignity, right, equity, right, as long as
of course I've heard feminist,
that need isn't met, we're still gonna keep fighting.
I'd say it's alive and well. I'd say that it's also very nuanced, and I think what it looks like is going to differ depending on where you are in the world. For me, I just see it as a lens, which isn't necessarily antagonistic or protagonistic. It's just a useful tool.
Similar to what Pearl just said, I find that a lot of feminist ideology and thought today feels more of like a supremacist movement rather than something that is supposed to be advancing the goals of equality. I don't think that we can really term what's going on as feminism because it looks so different to, I think, the earlier feminist movement. So in that way, I would say it's taken its last breaths of life. It's dying.
Yeah, I definitely think.
Yeah, I think feminism, I agree with Pearl, and I think Sydney is her name. Yeah, feminism is kind of like, it was supposed to be about equality, and it still is supposed to be about equality, which I think anybody, if that was just the definition itself, just woman being having equal rights and equal opportunity, you know, everybody would be a feminist. But it's not about that anymore. It's kind of been radicalized by certain groups and certain people, and unfortunately, it like Sydney's saying, it's kind of dying and taking its last breaths because of the state that it's in. Also, I am going to be commenting a lot over this, so if you guys don't want me to comment over this, you guys, I'll put a link to the video in the bottom and you can just watch it over. But yeah, I'm going to be commenting and breaking this thing down and apart, just like feminism. Nah, let me stop. But yeah, let's continue.
I definitely think it's getting more and more radicalized, for sure. So it's definitely still alive.
I think I'll preface and say that I don't know so much about modern Western feminism, and there might be a lot of terms that I don't know, like political jargon and stuff. But I believe in the advancement of women, whoever considers themselves a woman. I think there's a deficiency in society. So it's deeply rooted that feminism has always existed. I think America's a little obsessed with themselves, and it's like always feminism is rooted in America. And like, oh, white women started it. And it's kind of offensive because for thousands of years, women have been dying for their rights.
I think as a Black woman specifically, when you talk about feminism, yeah, the mainstream first thing you think about is a certain type of feminism that tends to exclude still, even today, even with intersectional feminism, exclude African-American women. And it's always kind of done that. And also like upper middle class white women has predominantly been the face of what we quote unquote consider feminism.
I mean, I'll say one thing about feminism in terms of Black women. It wasn't meant for Black women, but they definitely used Black women as like the poster child for it. Although Black women didn't necessarily need feminism because their men back then didn't even have the power to oppress them. It was something that was white woman created, you know, back then, and it was they kind of used Black women to kind of push their movement when Black women didn't really need it as much, you know, because they weren't necessarily getting oppressed by their men. Now, I know you can argue about that in the comments, but yeah, they just weren't. So, but like I said, I believe in women having equal rights and everything like that. I think that's the good thing that came from feminism. But I think I heard somebody say equity, and I don't agree in equity because equity means that you get equal outcome, and I don't believe in equal outcome. I believe in people having a equal opportunity, and you know, the equal and being equal rights, having equal rights, but not having an equal outcome. I think people have to work to get where they want to get, and some people will work harder, deserve to get where they're trying to go. Yeah.
I think feminism is attempting to say, okay, the first thing we agree on is that there are barriers and friction to what I need and what I want based on the fact that I'm a woman. What it ignores is that, and what privilege is that you may not have to think that being a woman and being a Black woman and being a Black woman who has a disability, for example, impacts you further. You have more barriers, you have more friction, you are less able to get what you want. You're undervalued in a way that's like, okay, well, you know, that's life. That's what I mean by equity, and that we're able to, without friction, all get the same needs met.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. I think life is easier if you're a girl, actually.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of benefits that men don't have. I'm not going to speak anything to race. I'm just talking about gender.
Yeah, they're really not going to like
her. Like, honestly, I think as a girl, you have equal opportunity in the world. I think there's benefits. Like, for example, we have quotas for women in specific jobs that are given to us that aren't given to men. So yeah, I would say it's easier being a girl.
Okay.
Just from
I agree with that.
Though, it seems there's a lot of pretty privilege in what you're saying, and that you're white and you present.
Do you think I'm pretty? Thank you.
I think that you present in a way that beauty standards have accepted. And so
they call me ugly on the internet all the time. They be roasting me daily, I swear to God.
I don't mean to
internet
say
is ruthless.
I think you're gorge. I just mean that there are a certain value that we give to certain bodies.
I mean, let's also dig into why these quotas exist and why these, what you're calling
because
privileges
we want
exist.
special treatment.
No, it's because they're.
I think so. I really think feminism has changed to them wanting special treatment.
Sexism.
How is it sexism when we have no barriers today? So we can
Who has no barriers?
It doesn't have barriers.
Women don't have barriers?
Women, yeah. What's
We have
stopping
no
you? You can do
barriers.
whatever you want.
I can
you?
or you can?
What's stopping you? As a woman.
As a woman.
As a woman.
That ignores a lot that I'm a woman with a disability. So there's a lot stopping me that you don't have to think about.
Well, as I said before, I'm speaking about women.
You're speaking for yourself.
You're speaking as an able-bodied
white woman.
Yes, but that
represents white.
Here's the problem with her. You gotta stop bringing up your personal feelings in certain arguments because they're talking about feminism. They're talking about things that have to do with women. You have to bring up things that are only going to have to do with women, because if you bring up the disabled argument, there are many disabled men who will go through the same problems that she does. You know, maybe you can bring up a specific problem that disabled women go through. You know, sure, bring that up, but don't just say, "Oh, I'm disabled." You know, that doesn't really help the argument. You know, and I hope they don't bring up. She doesn't keep bringing that up. You know, because it doesn't. That doesn't really, to Pearl's point, like she's talking about just things that pertain to women and can't pertain to men. But yeah, no, broadly speaking facts, I do think that feminism isn't about equality anymore. I think it's about equality when it benefits women, unfortunately. Do I think all feminists think that? Of course not. But the louder voices are unfortunately the radical feminists and things like that. So, and they don't want equality. They want equality when it benefits them, but not the responsibilities. But let's continue.
Of course, there's going to be other barriers if you're disabled. I'm sure. Like I'm not.
But yeah, I agree with Pearl. I don't see. Really think about it. What are some barriers that women have?
I would agree.
In the West.
You're just going to ignore the.
What are some barriers that women have in the West, in places like America, that you know that they have to like really overcome? You know, I don't see. Honestly, women are living in the most free and privileged time in the West that they've ever lived in before. You could argue maybe Roe versus Wade, but that's up to a state. That's up to certain states. I don't really think it's taken too much rights away per se. But yeah, women don't really have any barriers in the West. Now, if you want to argue in the Middle East and in other countries, yes, I would think that women have it way harder. But here in America, in the West, absolutely not. I think people just make problems that aren't really problems.
Pay gap, regulation over bodies.
Pay gap has been debunked so many times.
It doesn't exist.
My friend.
It doesn't. It's the industries that women pick.
Let's talk about it.
There's a pay gap, but it's because women don't want to do the hardest industries.
That's true.
I don't think it's that simple. I think that's an oversimplification. I think the fact of the matter is that women structure their lives differently to men. Men don't give birth. Men don't have to carry pregnancies. Men don't have to be the primary caregiver most of the time. Women also don't hold jobs for as long as men do. They often will stop and start. They'll go back into work. They'll take time off. They'll take part-time jobs. The way that men work and women work are astronomically different. And to try to say that they're comparable is where this issue comes from. They're not comparable.
Two things. First of all, let's dig into why they think that they should take these jobs, which is societal sexism. And then also, Department of Labor, all statistics, at least speaking in the U.S., have found that when compared for the same jobs, there still is a pay gap, particularly when it pertains to race.
Because 60% of women have never asked for a raise. So how can you complain about your pay if you don't ask?
Why are they not? What happens when women ask for a raise?
I've been wanting to say something.
No, Sydney and Pearlie are speaking facts. I've been debating about this for a long time.
Jump in,
but you know,
it's not true.
It is a very
pay gap has
privileged
been
label,
debunked
right?
so
To
many
be able
times.
to say that you're feminist, right? And I say that because I come from a working class background of Dominican immigrant parents. My mother would not necessarily identify as a feminist. I look to my mother, and I do think of her as a feminist. A lot of my ideas and my empowerment comes from seeing her like survive and put food on the table. When I'm thinking about feminism, I'm always thinking about who's not part of the conversation. What are the barriers? How do we think about equity? How do we think about self-empowerment and agency?
I keep
and
hearing
having
this
a
word
voice,
equity,
right?
equity, equity. I don't
and
think they really understand what it
human
means.
rights, education, access to health, homes, like having bread, having food, and those things are very important, right? And they're at the crux, right, of what a lot of us here know that we need. It's like there are the barriers, right, that we constantly ignore that are very much systemic and microaggressive, right? We see them and experience them every day.
Like what in the U.S.?
So,
like what?
What would you like to know an example of? So
I know you said that there's like barriers. I want to know what barriers in the
I
US
want to know
today as a
too.
woman.
Well, as
Good
a woman or
question,
as a woman
Pearl.
of color? Let's
Wait,
be
what?
specific.
As a woman. I said
And we
as a
don't.
woman.
As a woman,
well,
she
no,
said
I can't
that.
answer as a woman.
I
'cause I'm
just feel
not
like
a
your
woman,
question is
right?
kind of hostile when you're like,
How is that a hostile question?
There are
It's
no
a legit
barriers to what I
question.
want. Congratulations. That means you have a privilege where you're not facing any friction, and that's showing. And I feel like it's
I think
like
as an American, you're very privileged.
Exactly,
Like,
as I said
not
before,
ignoring
yes,
that.
Or like a
you are.
basic level of what, I mean, the feminist movement is when it comes to just being born a woman, right? Physically, pound for pound, we are born as women and we have less lean muscle mass than men. So
Yeah,
there are
true.
issues of violence and assault and stuff like that. And so therefore, there are policies, there are things to help women physically, like, for example, I believe being able to carry a firearm.
Yeah,
and
the
being
right
able
to
use that
bear
safely
arms.
to defend yourself against men
That's equal,
who are
yeah.
born naturally
Women
with
should be
more
able to do
muscle
that.
mass than a woman.
Yeah, that's fair.
I keep hearing the term equity. What would a world that has equity look like? Like,
That's
would
a
it
good question.
Would it be 50% of
I'm glad
everyone
she's
in
on
the
this
same
panel.
jobs?
She's
Would it be
asking
like
all the right
prison,
questions.
50%,
That's equality.
50%.
I see a lot of people
so
gonna
what
be
does equity
triggered in
look
this
like?
one.
So equity is generally described as a state of fairness because historically a lot of people have been arguing for equality, but what does that give us? Like 0.5 of the 1% being women. This doesn't really.
It gives you the world we live in right now, where you can come on a Vice panel with other women from different backgrounds and different cultures and argue about feminism. That's what it gives you. And then also, she spoke about like how it's like she spoke about like equity and stuff. I keep hearing equity. And also like she said about women being in higher jobs. That's fine. You want women in higher positions and things like that. That's fine. But that means they also have to do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. The garbage man, the plumbers, the electricians, all those jobs. But women don't want to do that. And when you go to countries that are egalitarian, where they push for women to do these things, they choose not to. So yeah, you can't just that's another problem I have with like feminists, because they want women at higher positions. Sure, that's fine, but you also have to take the positions that people don't want to do too, you know, which are mostly dominated by men. So you can't, that's what I mean about the responsibility. They feminists want all the things that benefit them, but not all the other things that come with it too. So yeah, this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. But let's continue.
Do anything for us. And so people have talked about equity instead, which is instead of sameness, it's fairness. And this would mean that we remove systemic barriers to engage in society, not just for women, but also for everyone.
Barriers,
So which
but what
barriers?
Yeah, I like Pearl.
I don't believe in.
I do for you to have a bunch of ramps in your life. It doesn't do shit. I need
Yo,
those ramps,
stop
right?
bringing
Can we
up
stick to
you.
male versus female? That's my question.
Look,
so
please.
I'm thinking male versus female.
But my feminism includes ability, it includes
but my
race.
question is,
Yes,
you guys
because
can
a
talk.
guy can
Versus
argue,
men.
where's my ramps?
Like what barriers do we need
that-
removed? Because that's my statement. I'm not
Please
stating
answer
anything
the
else.
question.
I'm stating women versus men.
It's very silly.
So what?
Yo.
I just want
The
to.
question
It's a
is
fair
silly.
question.
Yo, we're almost
It's
12
not a
minutes
fair
in today.
question.
Did
How
not
is it not
answer
a
his
fair
question.
question?
Kind of proving the point of what people, especially black women, other people who are anybody who's not white, why we hear feminism and we don't want that label because it means, I'm just gonna say, it means that. Like, it means that you're you've already gone into a pinnacle of whatever you think your happiness needs or whatever your survivalist needs are, when there are people on lower end who are trying to survive, who are trying to get to a point of what should be normal, based on what other people have.
It sort of sounds like you're saying feminism is not always inclusive then.
Right. It's most of the time it's not inclusive. It's more times than not.
I say feminism
it's
used black
women
women and took them away from the black man.
They're obviously
not all of them,
very basic is male versus female versus, you know. But unfortunately, we've only had one subset of women be the face and voice and the academics and research and everything to be able to say, well, that's the standard we need to be in, when there are other people who are still trying to get to some type of normalcy and just living.
What is the biggest issue then that feminism faces?
I think it's the mindset. Women taking like the agency, women taking initiative. I think it's mindset holding them back a lot, because if you want to be in a competitive world and compete, you have to have the right mindset. And I think a lot of people blame their lack of confidence or what society tells them for the reason they're not achieving what they need to achieve, when that's not the case. You have to have the mindset of achieving, because the men who built the world had the mindset of building it. So the women who want to engage and build that further, they need to have that same mindset.
Makes sense.
I don't think we do. I think that's like assuming that we all want to be capitalist babies.
Right.
I think that men are not well adjusted in the society, and women are not trying to re-embody what they have built for us. I think that like what we're forgetting is
crazy,
a very
man.
important detail, which is just like human respect and dignity.
Yeah, that's
and not asking people to prove what their experience is and to prove to you like it is like such conservative thinking to say like I don't understand, explain it to me, versus just saying I don't understand and let me respect what you are saying.
I'm respecting wherever you're starting from.
She said a bunch of stuff that didn't make no sense. If you're going to get people to hear you out and try to understand you, you gotta kind of explain where you're coming from, you know? You can't just say things and we have to accept it, or anybody has to accept it. You have to give like an explanation or something from where you're trying to speak from, you know? And like I said, the last woman just said fantastically, you know, you have to have the confidence to go out and do what the men are doing if you truly want equality. And some women are killing it and doing their thing. But yeah, I think there's women who don't like I said, they want equal. They want equal outcome without, you know, having to work for it. They just feel like it should be just given to them because they're just women, and that's that. But you got to work for it just like the men are working for it too, you know? So it's very simple as that.
I'm respecting that. I'm really respecting that. I'm saying that if you don't have the mindset you can even achieve it, you're never going to even try. So it's never...
achieve what? Like, what are we talking about? Because I feel like they projected this, like, capitalist ideology on every woman.
Achieve whatever it is you're looking for, equality, equity. But what I'm saying is women in the feminist space and a lot of these other spaces, we don't acknowledge that we have to take the initiative. We have to take the action. We have to have the mindset. We have to demand those things.
I don't understand how we're getting so off topic. This is about feminism today, whereas everybody wants to make this about their individual, here are all the multitude of other things that factor into my person. Great. This is about feminism. It's about womanhood. I understand that all of you have your own individual experiences. And
yes, because that was frustrating me too.
As a person, that's perfectly fine. But this is where intersectionality falls off the planet and loses, I would argue, probably the vast majority of people, including me. I'm not even a feminist. I don't give a crap about feminists arguing amongst themselves about who's the most victimized. But this is annoying to listen to. I honestly I don't understand anything anybody's even trying to get at.
Look, I just want to say that I don't think equity and this concept of competition can't coexist with each other. Equity is building more facilities for people who need them. It is recognizing that there are holes in the market and there's opportunities for women and feminine, expansive people, and meeting those opportunities. I think equity can buoy the pre-existing system that we live in a good way.
And this is where we're going to get to what I think the real feminist arguments are based off of policy. And abortion is the biggest one.
How many of you would identify as pro-choice? Let's do a show of hands for pro-choice.
I feel like pro-choice is pro-life, though.
Yeah.
Okay, and folks who identify as pro-life? Why
I want to speak about this after. I want to hear what they say, because I have my own opinion on pro-life and pro-choice.
Rare to, yeah, I'm so proud, let me beatbox in front of the Planned Parenthood, yeah, I got murder on my mind. The fact that it's celebrated that murdering children, especially in late-term pregnancies, is celebrated, that people are so proud of themselves for mutilating a fetus, is just, it blows my mind.
I don't think people are celebrating it, though.
Pro-life to even take that stand.
You said late-term pregnancy.
Yes.
A lot of abortions do not happen.
I made the distinction. I made the distinction specifically because lots of people still celebrate. There are people who, when the laws were passed actually here in New York, they said, yes, great, yes, I love the fact
but
that...
you need to ask about what are people celebrating, right? They're celebrating access. We're not celebrating...
I think they're celebrating the right to have.
Well, so this is what I'm saying.
Not killing babies.
When we're talking about access to...
I think that Sydney, this is where I disagree with Sydney a little bit. So I am pro-choice, so you guys have a reference or whatever. So this is where I disagree with her on. They're not celebrating the right. I mean, killing babies, that would be ridiculous. Of course, you have a lot of radical people, whatever, who might celebrate that and make fun of it or whatever. But I think I would argue the vast majority of people who are pro-choice aren't celebrating killing babies. That's just ridiculous. I think they're celebrating the right to basically their reproductive rights. Simple as that. And I'm just gonna say this because I've argued about this topic for hours and hours with my with some friends who are pro-life. And I think that the misconception, I think on both sides, every time this argument or this subject comes up, it's always when the pro-lifers argue, the biggest disagreement between both people who are pro-life and pro-choice is the killing of the baby or whatever, or deleting the baby or whatever. And, that's, I think, pro-lifers' big concern is the baby. That's the woman. You gotta have some concern for the woman because, I also think that, and this might come off a little nihilistic or whatever, but some people don't need to have babies. I'm gonna just keep it a buck. Some people don't need to be parents. But yeah, I think they're always arguing from both sides, and I think that you can come to like a middle ground, because there are certain things I disagree with pro-lifers, and there's some things that I disagree with people who are pro-choice. With pro-lifers, some people are like, oh, let's just outright ban abortion, which I don't agree with. And there are pro-choicers that are like, you should be able to abort a baby at any point, which I completely disagree with. Just like they were mentioning with late-term pregnancy, I don't think that should be, I think that should be illegal. I think they should ban that everywhere. And when people are like, oh, you should have an abortion anytime or whatever, that's where I'm kind of inching towards the pro-life side. And I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. But when the pro-life people say, oh, you should just flat out ban abortion, I think that's just as ridiculous. I think that pro-lifers and pro-choices can come to a middle ground. And I have with some of my friends too, because they are pro-life and everything. So I think the common ground, and here's my opinion, with all the people who, because this is a very divisive topic, not just amongst feminists, but I think that some states have made it illegal to have an abortion after 3 months, and unless it's like off of grape and special circumstances like that. I think that is a fair thing that most people can agree with. Of course, you're gonna have people on the far left and far right who are just like, no, I'm standing my ground where I'm at. But most people that I talk to who are pro-life or pro-choice or whatever, they end up having, when I talk about that, the people who are pro-choice, because their main concern is the baby. Within the first 3 months, it's not really a baby. Some people argue at conception it's a baby. The brain starts, I put it like this. You're clinically dead when your brain dies. So I would say that you're alive when your brain starts to develop. Now, it does start to develop in early pregnancy, but the very important parts of your brain doesn't start to develop till after 3 months. So that's where I would say the first 3 months should be the time where a woman is allowed to have to have the right to abort. But after that, I think it should be illegal unless it's under special circumstances. 3 months is enough to know that you're pregnant for most people, okay? So I think that is a very fair thing. I think most people on both sides will agree with that, but you guys can tell me in the comments. But let's continue and see what they say. But I think I hope somebody brings that up. I don't rarely see anybody bring something up where, a lot of these arguments is like, here's my point. You're always going to disagree fundamentally on certain arguments, but where can we find a middle ground? And I think these conversations need to focus more on finding a middle ground rather than just saying disagree. Okay, what can we agree with? Okay, but yeah, sorry about being long-winded. Let's continue.
Access to reproductive health and to abortion rights, right, and to being pro-choice. Listen, that's your body, you do you.
The child is not your body.
A zygote.
A baby.
It's so scary for me to hear people calling like guns the biggest equalizer for women, but taking their choices away from them at a policy level.
Why is
that? Didn't make any
Having a gun is an equalizer.
It is.
Having rights is an equalizer.
Yeah, that's
Having
right.
choice is
Right.
an equalizer.
Just like a gun right.
And in this country,
41 forms of
the
birth
policies
control.
that are pushed to continue perpetuating patriarchy and anti-women, taking the autonomy away from women, it is heartbreaking to see women pushing that propaganda. It's all
I agree with her in
Like,
terms of
you are
taking it
brainwashed
completely
because
away.
with me,
No,
so
because I've
therefore
been
I'm
brainwashed. I have lived deeply institutionalized.
Man,
I have lived under Islam.
It's
I'm
not about
interested in any
just
of that.
you,
Like,
though.
There's no
You're not
guilt
interested
for
in
me.
human
No, I'm not interested in
living.
thinking that women are doing this really bad thing. In my religion, abortion is actually allowed. If the woman needs it, she's allowed.
What
because,
is your religion?
It's very interesting
I wanna
how
know.
fundamental America is.
This has nothing to do
very
with
I wonder how much
very
if I
conservative,
propose that to them,
scientific,
like a 3-month strategy,
human rights.
if they would
We're
be able
also
to come
talking about
together.
people not having access to abortion clinics where they're doing the things themselves and they die.
No.
Right? We're also talking about women in the hospital who are pregnant, who have chosen to stay with their pregnancy and have issues at hospitals, and hospitals that are like, oh, no, we don't do that.
Okay.
Listen, for whatever reason, you don't need to explain it to anybody, but a lot of times when we're talking about access to reproductive health, for me, I'm thinking about Black, Indigenous, people of color, particularly women and girls who are working class, who do not have even access to proper sexual education. It's the oppressive state of saying, I will force you to have a child even against your own will, right? Especially when you're thinking about women and girls who would be forced to have these children, who are already living in very traumatized and scarce situations. You want to ask about barriers? That's a barrier right there.
Okay, I think she has a point when I do think it's ridiculous to try to force women to have these babies. I do think it's ridiculous, but I do think there does need to be a cutoff time to when you're going to be aborting these kids, and that's where I kind of go into the pro-life side, where it's just after that point, I think you are killing kids, especially if you're in the 3rd trimester. That's crazy. In some places still allow that. That is literally murder. I agree with pro-lifers on that specifically. I think the point that where you can bring people together is the time of when you can have that abortion and when it's allowed. I think by 3 months, allowing some grace period, 3 months, is enough time to know that you're pregnant and make a decision. And it's also going to satisfy the pro-lifers a bit, to where you're not going into late pregnancies and killing off the baby. But yeah, let's continue. And also, my disagreement that I always tell to people who are pro-life is, you're not raising the baby. Like, well, you're worried about all these babies, but after they're born, you don't really give a shit. So, like, you're not taking care of these kids. Somebody else has to. Somebody else has to. They go into the system and everything. You don't care about these kids after they're born. So, like, why are you going to force somebody to raise them? It's not your problem. Let people deal with those problems. Now, if you're concerned about babies being killed, I get that. But to outright ban it, I think is kind of ridiculous. I think that's pretty crazy. But I digress.
Women in poverty aren't able to access the way that rich women are, and no matter what happens, rich women are gonna keep getting abortions, and people in poverty are gonna not. And the choice, opening it up, the overruling, is marginally affecting people of color, people in poverty, way more than people who are going to get access to those abortions.
Actually, incorrect. You're the misquote. There's actually more abortions for people in poverty. It's just at a lower rate.
Wait, that didn't make sense.
Why do you think that abortion has been so tied up in this feminism conversation?
Maybe she just meant to say one part of it.
Social structure set up around body.
Yeah.
I think women want to sleep around and not have any consequence for it. Yeah, instead of, you know, taking personal
Why are y'all
accountability
proud of
and
that,
being on
though?
birth control, they just want to like do whatever they want.
You say this like it's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing. You fucking.
You said,
oh my God.
do you have any care to empower women, or is disempowering women part of your like steez?
No.
See, this is shame, insult, guilt, need to be right. Okay. Why is it
Okay, use
empowering
Kevin
to sleep around?
Samuels sign language.
What I'm saying is, like, I feel like you do like take like the way you speak on women is very sort of like
By holding them
women just
accountable?
don't want to do this. Women just don't have this. Women just wanted this. And I wonder why you have so much like hatred towards women.
No, she
Where does
doesn't.
that root in? It's
She just asked a
women do.
legitimate question.
I
That doesn't mean you don't have
I could be
self-hate.
black and still be internalized racism.
Exactly. I'm saying
Why does
specific
everything
things that
keep
you're saying.
going
Like,
back to
women
blackness
don't want
for
to
her?
work.
It's
Women
not just
don't want
about
this.
that.
Women want to sleep around. Where did you
She
learn
brings up
these
her
belief
being
systems
disabled.
from?
They bring up
the
blackness. She
question
brings up being Latino.
Why does
like,
abortion keep getting brought up? 40% of women that have had abortions have had 2 or more. 40%.
Good for
so
them.
what does that say to me? That means you're using it as a form of birth control, and they don't track the 60%.
What kind of abortion?
Can you let me finish? They don't track the 60% to say who in the future has abortion. So to me, it's like, why are they dying so hard for abortion? They want to sleep around with no consequences, even though you have 41 forms of birth control.
Okay, like I said at the beginning, y'all know I'm not biased. I'm somebody that's pro-choice, and Pearl is making a lot of sense. You know, I think there does need to be some type of restrictions with certain things. I think that's where the crux of this argument is coming from, and the people who are pro-life just feel like there should be none. And that's kind of, there's never a line to be drawn, and there should be. And I think if you have one drawn, this problem will disappear. Like, it won't disappear, but these arguments won't be much of a big thing. So, but yeah, I think I personally know some women who kind of use it as a form of birth control, and they're just sleeping around and doing crazy stuff. So to Pearl's point, I understand that, but like I said, does there need to be certain restrictions? Sure. Should it be banned outright? Absolutely not.
Who does that benefit? I don't think that benefits women. I think actually
Agreed.
that benefits men, because it means that men can have sex with you without consequence. It means that you can sleep with whoever you feel like. Great, but there are consequences, because women are the ones who get pregnant and carry babies and give birth.
It's very binary version of sex.
Yes, because sex is binary, but please let me finish my point. Okay. It's tricking women into thinking that aborting a pregnancy, terminating a pregnancy, is something to be celebrated, when in reality, for a lot of women, especially those who are doing it under duress, say that they've been raped, or that, you know, in the small circumstances where something really traumatic has happened to them, that's a medical decision. Or say that they're miscarrying and then they have to, you know, have an assisted termination. That's a medical procedure. It's not a celebration of, oh, look at the.
the idea, the sort of like
She did.
moral setting of that it needs to be rare is...
Add that as an ad lib to a rap song.
I think the delineation between that's a medical abortion and that's like a fun abortion is really interesting because they're all medical. It's all a medical procedure. And so no matter what you're doing, going in there and getting it's not like, oh, you're only allowed 2. It's just like,
but the
you
reason
should just
for
be
it
able to get a medical procedure done when it's something that you need done.
We shouldn't be desensitized to taking someone's life. That should never be an empowering factor for a woman.
I definitely agree,
but it's not
like,
that simple.
There should be no absolute thing any woman should do. There should not be an absolute response to incest or rape or any of these things. Every woman should have the choice of if they want to or not want to carry that child, whether it is having fun, getting raped, incest, whatever it is. I don't glorify and glamorize abortion. I think it's a very traumatic thing. I doubt that if somebody has to do, like if they have to do it, they'll do it. I don't think that people are like, you know, doing like have 6, get the 7th free and having fun with it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think that like glamorization
women
and
I
glorification
do know that have
of
done
any
it, they
side
definitely
is not
weren't
okay.
happy about it.
Did the
I can
Dobbs
say that.
decision make anybody here sort of rethink abortion access, reproductive health care?
Pretty sure it didn't.
It's anti-woman, right? It's it does not center people to have that voice for themselves and their own decisions, right? It is a barrier, right?
It's
if we
giving
want to put it that
it's
way.
giving more agency to women because it's moving it back to the state level. So locally,
But why would the state have
locally
the ability
women
to tell me what to do?
Because it
Locally, the
doesn't
women
to choose
have that
You didn't
power.
even hear what she
If you
said.
take out the viewpoint that life begins at conception, which is a really big
up to the
defining
state level
principle
now.
for both the pro-life
So it's up to
crowd,
your
who
state.
very, very, vehemently believe that, and then obviously a lot of the pro-choice crowd do not believe that. Taking that out of the equation, you do not have just whatever kind of autonomy you want as a person. It's regardless of male or female. You can't just have free run to do whatever the hell you want. That's not how society operates.
Yeah,
so
sure.
At no point do I have the right to tell anyone in this room what they should or should not do with their bodies.
I don't think you understand what she just said.
That's me respecting
I have a question here.
It's not about your body, it's about the kid's body. I don't care what you do with your body.
It's my body, right? We're talking about my body.
You're talking about
Jordan, I saw your hand creep
Wish I
up.
could have a conversation with Pearl
The
just to
Dobbs
ask her like
decision for
specifically
me
like
reinforced
up to
how
many
important
months,
it is that we
or if
approach
it's
these
just
issues from a
she
cultural
outright just thinks
perspective,
it should be banned.
because it reinforces something that I have told many of my colleagues and peers in
Sydney
the past,
too. I
which
wonder
is
where-
that so
where
long as
she
you
would
lack a
stand on
cultural
that.
consensus, any issue can become a political football that can be decided by another election cycle. And so long as there is no strong consensus, I would expect this to be our reality going forward, these extremely vitriolic and aggressive conversations until there's another miraculous consensus that brought about Roe v. Wade. But what it...
Yeah, these conversations are going to continue until you come to some sort of middle ground, unfortunately. And it doesn't seem like, especially when I hear a lot of these conversations, that they do. Because I think they're always arguing, oh, well, I'm right and I'm right. And you're never going to come to a consensus like that.
More or less reinforced for me is that we're going to have more of these difficult conversations.
I want to talk about transgender issues. Should trans women be included in feminist conversations? How about in women's spaces?
No. No, they should not. Because women should have the space to talk about their problems without it being interrupted and cannibalized and stuff. I don't think that they should be allowed into their spaces and stuff. But, here's my thing. Okay, I think that they can talk about, certain problems and be in the spaces and stuff, but I don't know. My whole thought on the whole trans movement and thing, I don't necessarily agree with it. I think people can do whatever they want or whatever. But once you start to change how society is and start to infringe on other people's rights, I think that's where it becomes a problem. So I think that the trans movement isn't necessarily hurting men. That's why it's like whatever to us, but it definitely is hurting women in certain areas like sports and things like that. I remember I covered Leah Thomas and in a video, and yeah, that's a perfect example. Or you got like in MMA where you got women getting beat up by men. Like, it's just crazy. So yeah, I don't think they should be allowed into certain spaces. And I think the problem with feminism is certain parts of feminism are like okay with allowing them in, and I think a large majority of women don't want them in, and they need to speak louder. Unfortunately, the radicals are more louder than the people who there's a silent majority that are just quiet because of like certain ramifications, like people getting pretty much fired from their jobs for certain things, or because they don't agree with a certain agenda, certain movements, and things like that. So yeah, people are just scared to speak because of this cancel culture and things like that. So yeah, there's a silent majority who don't want like trans women in their spaces, and I'm okay with trans women doing what they want in certain things, but not to infringe on other people, not at all, you know. Yeah, and I can respect people or whatever and be nice to people, but that doesn't mean I have to believe in your ideology or your lifestyle, you know. I can get along and be respectful to you and disagree with your lifestyle, you know. And that's another thing, or why even if you notice throughout the video, I'll still call the trans person their pronouns or whatever. I don't have a problem with that per se, but if you want me to believe in your lifestyle and think that that's okay, then that's where we're gonna have a bit of disagreement. But yeah, other than that, if it's not affecting anybody, do you. But I think that it's definitely affecting women's spaces, and kind of like, why is this even a conversation, debate about feminists, to be honest? But let's continue.
Yes, they're women. What's the
Of course,
question?
our first response is that
Pearl,
trans women are women.
not everybody believes that, though.
So I want to come at this from the position of an athlete.
Oh, Jesus.
So I play semi-pro
She said,
basketball,
"Oh,
semi-pro
Jesus."
volleyball. So when it comes to like athletic spaces, I don't think that trans women should be allowed into athletic spaces, because I don't think it's a fair. I think as female athletes, we work so incredibly hard for the little opportunity there is in women's sports.
Would this be a barrier for you?
There's no barrier. There's less opportunity in some industries.
That's what a barrier is.
That's not what a barrier is. A barrier is
Hold on, guys.
It's stopping you from entry.
We work very hard for the little opportunity there is in the space.
That's a barrier. It's just making it harder, that's all.
Sorry, we're just not. And so it's like you're going to take the little opportunity that we're given. And the problem is, like, we can't compete. We can't. Like, I'm 6 foot. If I go up against a 6 foot guy and I play basketball with him, he's going to body me.
And what happens if I go up against you?
Hold on.
9 times out of 10, yeah.
Years more of training. And so it's like you're taking away the little opportunity that we're given and we all work so hard for. And you're just giving it back to biological guys. It's like, this will be the end of women's sports.
Facts.
Have you tried confidence?
Hold on.
What?
Sorry, confidence can't make me bench what a guy benches. Confidence can't make me 6'7".
So hostile. She's sharing
And confidence.
Pearl is speaking facts on this one.
And I'd have to go.
No, she's not. She's a woman who's had an experience.
It's always
You guys are so obsessed with your own experiences and your own existence, and yet when a woman is sitting here telling you, I feel as though this is unfair and this is compromising and this situation is not helping women, you guys are like, meh, meh, meh. But when you're like, I'm a black person that did this, 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 and this, then it's valid and fair and viable.
That's
Eli,
fair.
I want to give you the chance to respond.
You can't discount
So this is
people
basically a
just
joke
'cause-
of a talking point. Yeah. Everyone has biological advantages in sports. How tall are you?
What? That doesn't make any sense.
5'11" and a half. I'm tall.
I'm 5'8". I am a trans woman. You would crush me. You would absolutely
But
crush
that's
me.
because you
density,
don't
wrist
play the
strength.
sport.
Yeah.
Muscle density, you can't switch those.
Yeah, exactly. You would crush me.
But also, Eli, you would never play at the level that Pearl plays.
Exactly. Like, what the hell?
Let me give you a few more examples here.
That is a dumb
Michael
example.
Phelps produced more lactic acid in his body, which caused him to swim better than any of his competitors. This was widely celebrated. And nobody contested it. Now, this is a performance-enhancing hormone.
But he wouldn't compete against women.
We all have different bodies. And now I'm not saying that trans women who aren't on hormones should participate, but there are, I mean, every major medical and every major sports organization agrees that trans women who have been on hormones for between 1 and 3 years, depending on the organization,
I wonder if he thinks that they should fight in the UFC too.
The study that you're referencing had like 7 people participated.
That's misinformation, by the way. I'm referencing several different studies. I'm a trans woman and a researcher.
It's getting personal. I don't want it to be personal.
A lot of us live in this space where we're told that our opinions don't count because they're not the right kind of opinions, and we're constantly shouted over and talked over, regardless of what we look like, because there's one group in society that basically takes precedence, and it's frustrating. So yeah, of course, it's frustrating because when we try to talk about it, we get shouted down, we get told to be quiet, we get spoken down too as well.
Sinister ass witch laugh she just let off.
Women. Let's try to make this an opportunity to
You're literally a white woman from Australia. You live in a bubble and you're pissed that voices that have been silenced forever finally can be heard.
That's why they have the voice, because they speak up.
Oh my
Okay, we're having a conversation about transgender women.
You just literally hold up. Sorry, I was distracted by our evil ass witch laugh, but you just proved Sydney's point. Sydney is basically just saying that people get shut down because of how they look or what they perceive their social status to be. And you just came back and said, oh, you're a white woman from Australia, so basically you don't have an opinion. You shouldn't have an opinion. That's exactly what Sydney was saying, and she just proved it right after. Like, oh gosh, isn't she from New York? Are you dumb?
To participate. Jordan, I wanted to hear from you.
So I am not a professional athlete. The closest thing I have ever done to anything athletic was I used to do competitive show choir when I was younger, and I don't feel really qualified to make carte blanche statements about whether or not trans women should compete in every kind of sport. And I understand that that is kind of, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, I can understand that.
For me, my first inclination is to approach everything through a lens of inclusivity. But at the same time, I also can't speak accurately to every kind of sport and the different things that go into it. So I really think in these instances, the decisions are best left up to the professional governing bodies that dictate these particular sports.
I just feel like
that was actually a very base response from Jordan. That was actually a good response from her. I think that yeah, it's funny because a lot of people who argue about this sports thing have never played a goddamn sport in their life or even played it professionally. And anybody that I've argued with like that played professionally, they don't agree with it. They don't agree with allowing trans women into women's sports. You know, they don't agree with it. The vast majority is not as small as you think. It's just a small minority that are just louder, unfortunately. That's one thing I can say about the trans community. They're very connected together to the point where when they want shit to be heard, they are heard. That's one thing I'll give them. But yeah, they're not even playing in these sports, but they have such a big opinion about it. It's freaking crazy, yo. It's freaking crazy. But yeah, like I said, I don't have a problem with trans or anything like that. But yeah, and like I said, I don't have a problem calling them whatever pronouns, whatever, so long as it's not nothing crazy. But yeah, but also you should have the right not to want to call somebody by their pronouns, and you just gotta eat that. But I just choose to do it. Whatever, but if somebody doesn't choose to do it, that's their choice not to do that. But yeah, I'm going off topic, but let's continue.
in places, as an ally, in places where there's no understanding, we can just respect and not really, like, our opinions don't fucking matter.
Eli, if they didn't, then how are you on a vice panel?
Several times.
A lot of the stuff she's saying is just contradictory.
This is more than about
sense.
sports. This is about free and equal participation for transgender people in social life. And the right sees this as a socially acceptable way to begin to remove trans people from different engagements in our society. So it does just start with sports or bathrooms or locker rooms, something that they find is more acceptable. And then at this point, they started to move into education, getting trans teachers fired, banning trans books. This is a route that is very effective because it's seen as more acceptable. But it's also overlooking a lot of major details. Like, I mean, do y'all know how many trans women have won national titles?
One too many.
One. Leah Thomas is the only one.
If one too many?
You gotta love
women's
Pearl.
sports were actually
I disagree with her on some
end
things,
in
but
some
I
way,
like Pearl. I like her.
I mean, it's just not happening. Wouldn't you think there would be more trans women in sports when the majority of states do allow trans women full participation? International titles, zero. No global titles have ever been won by a trans woman.
But that doesn't mean that they're still not like winning titles and different things.
And sort of this social movement
Although they
that
don't win a national
lived through, we're living
championship.
through right now.
We
How about
did
beauty
something right.
standards? We talked
We're
a little
doing
bit about
better.
this. This got brought up at the beginning. How does that tie into femininity?
Sorry, I'm very into this idea because I do think it is one of the larger intersections that just doesn't get very discussed, which is, like I was talking about before, barriers and friction are placed up around bodies. And the fatter I get, the older I get, the less people will
pretty privilege is definitely a real
value
thing.
I will have for society.
She's right.
So, you know, I'm already starting out as a woman with no legs. If I had something on my face, I have my beauty. That's one of my privileges. I have my whiteness. That's one of my privileges. I used to have thinness, and now I'm getting fatter. Things are changing. And I think every single time that we talk about feminism, pretty privilege should be discussed because we have these ideas. If your skin tone is this, if your hair is this, if your body looks like that, it's about whether or not you are given an equal opportunity based on what you look like.
I saw it.
I think a lot of times the women that complain about beauty standards don't complain about them when they got privilege, when they were young and attractive and thin.
That's fair.
So it's like, you're complaining when the privilege is gone, but privilege is invisible to those who have it. And women, it's a privilege, and men don't turn 18 and get.
But Pearl's speaking facts right here. I gotta admit, she's speaking facts.
One of the most integral parts of the beauty conversation.
She's actually pretty. I actually find her
colorism.
very attractive.
I'm a dark-skinned Black woman, proud of it, and proud of being myself. For the most part, I did not. Why am I going to cry about this?
Okay.
I did not grow up thinking I was beautiful because I was that, and I think in the Black space. We have these conversations, but I think I'm glad I bring it up because I think feminists actually really should be part of the colorism topic because colorism is not just shades within being Black. It's shades because they're, again,
just darker skin.
The beauty standard is the closer to whiteness you are, the more beautiful you are. I think it's something that if more people in different shades, particularly white women, because of knowing that standard, and we work together on that, then we have a lot. I think something we can unify on, but also something that we can make strides in right now that I'm just not seeing. It's only, again, that's why people feel like you have to be a Black.
Okay, so I just want to speak on that because I did an episode. It's called Privilege Tier Ranking List. Good video. You should definitely go watch it. I'll link it. But yeah, and I was talking to my brother. The colorism is definitely a thing. I know some people who might be lighter skinned or maybe white or anything might not understand it, but definitely it's getting better now, but around the world it still affects people today. Back then Black was not seen as beautiful, and it's unfortunately indoctrinated a lot of Black women to think that they're not beautiful, or for example, like their hair isn't beautiful. You see a lot of Black women wearing weave and stuff, which I personally don't like, but they because of how society has shown them that their hair isn't beautiful, so they think that they have to wear the white woman's hair for them to be accepted and be beautiful. And you can see that it's even trickled down to today. So it's just one of those things that has just passed down, unfortunately, that where black women feel like they are not beautiful because that's what the media has kind of told them and pushed them to do. You know, it's just really sad, you know. And then it's just like not even just in America, it could be all over the world, definitely in a lot of Latino communities or even like Asian communities all over the world. You don't even have to be necessarily black to for it to be a problem, but it's perceived that the darker you are, the more ugly you are, the lighter skin you are, the more beautiful you are. It's crazy, man. But yeah, I go more in depth about that in that video I did with my brother. So definitely go check that one out.
Feminists, because it's a topic that only really black feminists are talking about because it deals with being black.
How do beauty standards make you feel, Morris?
I mean, kind of what you're saying, Antonia. As a Black Latina woman in my community,
it's
right,
definitely
like,
in the
I
Latin
grew up
community
and I was
too.
ugly, right? Like that's what I was considered. I was not considered beautiful. Of feeling ugly, but also being told I was, right, had a lot to do with what is believed in my community, right? Colorism is one of them, and so to say I'm gonna redefine beauty for myself. And to say I own myself and I get to decide what's beautiful, right? And I get to decide what I want to wear and how I want to wear it. And I don't need to, right? It's almost a repelling, right? Like I'm like, no, you know what? I am beautiful. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I'm gonna feel myself because if no one else is gonna feel me, it's on me to feel me too.
I gotta say though, I did grow up being referred to as very beautiful for a woman with a disability. And that to me always fed this idea that disability doesn't mean beautiful.
That's kind of
I am
shitty
in some
thing to
form
say
of
to somebody. Like,
exceptionalism,
you're
which I
beautiful
then
for a
had to keep up
disabled
with
person.
forever. So it's like
That's really
I
fucked
got
up.
this thought as I started to age, like
Well, it's
you
kind of
can
like
have
the
no
same
legs,
thing
you
when
better
people
not
say,
fucking get
"Oh,
fat."
you're beautiful for a
And
black
so
woman."
this idea that
shit is
like
crazy.
there are certain people who are beautiful and certain people who aren't, and that inherently holds value.
Well, that does hold true.
You
Some
know,
people
find
just
it in
aren't
yourself, yes.
attractive.
And
Jordan?
Sorry, that
Beauty
sounds fucked
standards
up.
are toxic bullshit hierarchical nonsense. And I say
No,
that
it's
as someone
not,
who has
Jordan.
spent
I disagree
over a
with you.
year collectively of my life in
Well,
eating
some of them.
disorder
Some of them. I agree.
institutions
Some of them.
because I
Some of them
have
are.
tried to put my body through hellish things to meet these beauty standards, which more often than not are not based in reality.
Yeah. Okay. I get what she's
Typically
saying.
trends, they're created to push things. They're extremely useful for marketing, but they don't serve anyone's health. They don't serve anyone's self-esteem. They only
I get
act
what she's
to
saying.
try and tell us that there's a allegedly right way to have a body. And if
There-
you don't
there
occupy
is,
that
though,
space and
but,
have that
you know,
body,
I
then
think
you're a
the
piece
media
of shit,
kinda takes too
which is
much of it.
absolute nonsense. And there are way too many women and men in the world who end up doing terrible things to themselves because they fall into this trap of thinking that you have to be this way. And if you aren't this way, then there's something inherently wrong at your core, which is nonsense. You're perfect.
Okay. I wanted to see what she sounded like she was gonna say you're perfect the way you are. I hope that's not what she's gonna say, because I don't agree with that fully. You know, obviously, I think if you're like significantly, you know, overweight, or you don't keep yourself clean and take care of yourself, like, no, you're looking crazy out here. But yeah, I do agree somewhat with what she's saying. Like with I say like Instagram has kind of ruined everybody's expectation in terms of like looks and stuff. Like you have all these Instagram models and stuff, and a lot of them they have their bodies done, or they have their pictures altered. You come to find out, and they don't even look like their pictures. So everybody has this unrealistic expectation, especially women. I think it's more targeted on women, but they have this unrealistic expectation for what their body is supposed to look like. So I understand what she's saying in terms of that. So yeah, I get that, but yeah, let's continue. But last thing I wanted to say is there is like a universal foundation for what is like you look good, like, you know, your face being symmetrical, you being a decent weight and shape. So there is a certain standard, whatever, but I do think that in some places is overhyped and unrealistic. That's where I can agree, but there is a standard universally. All right, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that everybody should have a standard for their body. You don't have to be a freaking runway model or a bodybuilder, but you need to keep yourself in decent shape. That's the one thing that we can control, and I'm always going to preach that. I don't care how mad I get.
Perfect the way you are.
No, you're not.
That's literally the core of it. You are perfect the way you are, and anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is feeding into this industry and is just, they are not your friend or looking out for you.
I don't agree with that last part.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, beauty in the industry is exploitative, but also we have to remember a lot of the beauty standards are based around health, what's perceived as health, like symmetry, certain weights, things like that. So there is that side where we have to balance it, and I think we're seeing so much more representation, which I think is incredibly important.
Well, I just think that, like, if women really cared about beauty standards, like the obesity rate wouldn't be what it is.
But what about you?
The beauty standards.
She said, "What about you?"
I mean, I just think like some people are more attractive, some people are less attractive, and that's just, you know, where would I rate myself 1 to 10?
Well, we're not rating. It's okay.
That's what
said,
I
"What
mean.
about
like,
you?"
I just
But
think like some
she
people.
herself
you
is
are
too
overweight.
overweight.
You don't care about beauty
get that.
standards.
Well,
is that right?
like the point is that the beauty standard is thin, right?
Your standard?
Obesity comes from men and women, though.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. But I'm saying if women really wanted to fit the beauty standard, they would be thin.
I know, from my experience as well, is growing up, again, in a mostly white neighborhood but I was always comparing myself to literally other people who have a different body type, but I was considered other or to something because it didn't conform to that body type. When that same body type
I could say
became
like in the
popular
90s and stuff.
with
Like
Kim
if you're
Kardashian,
around,
the
they'd be
Kardashians,
like, "Oh, you got a big
who
butt."
are
It's
different,
like,
right?
what?
Than me.
I like
say,
that.
are different skin color, right? And there's a lot of
She's a bit out of
animosity.
shape, but she's still pretty.
Black
Like she
communities
could
of the
shave
fact
off a
that,
few extra pounds, but
when it
she's
was
not like
on
crazy
black
obese.
skin,
you know?
it was an issue, but when it was
she
on
could
Kim
definitely lose
Kardashian and the
a couple of
Kardashians,
pounds.
it was $1 billion
She's
business.
Still attractive though.
Our time together has almost come to an end. We sort of started talking about feminism, big picture. We're going to try again. Is feminism dead?
I think feminism is alive.
This video has proved that it is.
I'm thankful to be a participant and believer of it.
I would say, as far as the West goes, I think that feminism has been cannibalized by other movements
Agreed.
like leftism, like transgenderism.
So I think feminism is very much alive and well. I think it takes different forms depending on who you're talking to, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And as I've defined in the beginning, for me, I use it as a lens. So I don't think I'll ever stop having it in my arsenal, if you will. It makes for a good vice panel.
Okay, that is the end of the video. Yeah, they said a lot. They went through a lot of things in this video, and I know some things are. Pearl is a wild card in there because you know she has a lot of definitely a lot of controversial statements in there that are definitely going to trigger people. You know, definitely they didn't trigger me. I had some things that I disagreed with her too, as far as like the pro life and pro-choice thing, you know, but I feel like that's where one thing I disagree with with a lot of people, you know, but yeah, other than that, I think she was speaking a lot of facts and stuff, and I think some of the people brought up some good things like about like the beauty standards and things like that. But yeah, I think this was a pretty diverse panel. I would say like a lot of the leftist women were pretty like, they're pretty kind of showing what I mean by radical and not really listening. They were arguing from their, I think the only problem I had with this panel is this, like a lot of people were arguing about like personal things instead of feminism and just women specifically. Like she was arguing about disabilities. There are disabled men. You were arguing about being a black, being black, but there are black men. You know, you got to argue things that are specifically pertain to women when you're talking about these arguments. It's just like if I brought up, let's say, religion in this argument. yes, I'm religious. I believe in my faith, but not everybody does, and not everybody is religious. So it doesn't help in a conversation, you know. So yeah, that's one of my critiques in this. And some of the people were just some of these women were just crazy. I'm just gonna keep it a buck. But yeah, nevertheless, good conversation. Pearl and Sydney were definitely pretty good in this conversation, and the trans woman Jordan, and I did agree with the black woman for a couple things too. So I thought those were pretty good people to have on the panel. A lot of people were just kind of like, I didn't get too much from the other girl who, I forgot her name, but I think she was conservative or something, but she was very quiet. But yeah, that's the end of the video. I want to hear your opinions, guys. I want to know, what do you think about this debate? What do you think about pro-life, pro-choice? It's a lot of controversial topics, so just like try to be respectful of each other and everything. I would like disagreeers, okay? I like seeing you guys in my comments, so don't get it twisted. If you come in the comments respectfully, I'm gonna reply. I want to see you guys' opinions. So I like my disagreeers, so come down and disagree with me. But I'll see you guys in the next video. BQ quick review. You know how we do. Boom!
The pieces and patches I gotta be, cause the edges are jagged. I do not call my piece lessons with real beef, they be squeezing them ratchets. You not the same person that you on internet, I've been smelling some catfish. Don't condone violence, cause we move in silence, you know that they got it like Metal Gear Solid. Pick up the pieces and patches I gotta be, cause the edges are jagged. I do not call my piece lessons with real beef, they be squeezing them ratchets. You not the same person that you on internet, I've been smelling some catfish. Don't condone violence, cause we move in silence, you know that they got it like Metal Gear Solid.